This isn't just a podcast, it's a movement. The Middle Ground Mike is fighting for truth and unity. Subscribe now or support us today. Links are in the notes. Stand with us. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Middle Ground Mike. We got a great guest here today, Adam. He left billion-dollar boardrooms to join the fight for unity, and that kind of goes hand in hand with what we do here at the Middle Ground. Co-founder of U.S. United with law enforcement leaders, activists, neighbors, and pretty much just people in general who are tired of seeing our country tear itself apart. Thanks for joining the show, Adam.
Appreciate you having me. It's good to meet.
Yeah, tell everybody a little bit about who you are.
Okay. Well, you started it. I spent the first 25 years or 30 years of my career in investing and then in running companies, both public and private. And so considered myself a business person and spent, looked at the world and I was like, I got to go work. I got to focus on doing that and, providing for my family and all the things that are part of, achieve the American dream. About 5 years ago, George Floyd was killed. And I was sitting there yelling at the television and yelling at everybody. And my wife, much smarter than I, sitting next to me, said, "Nobody can hear you. What are you going to do?" And I had an epiphany moment sitting there. And I said, look, I love this country and everything it represents. I mean, I do believe it's the greatest country that we've seen, and nothing's perfect, but this country has done so much and can do so much more. And I didn't recognize what I saw. And I said, I have to do something beyond donate to X. That is someone with my skill, some sets of people with background in investing in business and finance and relationships. And those skill sets don't take time, not just money, but time and energy to make a difference. Things won't change. And I've always been an entrepreneur. I've started lots of businesses. Some have worked, some have not. And I said, I'm an entrepreneur. I can figure out what to do. I will set out on this journey. And that journey led me to a lot of interesting people, led me to Flint, Michigan, not far from you, to Sheriff Chris Swanson. And he and I and another person named Ken Wadake Jr. created Us United, really. And it's a movement to build unity in America by giving everyday Americans the tools they need to reunite their country. None of this is going to happen from today, from politicians, from media. It starts with all of us, we the people, to figure out how we bridge divides, how we come together. Unity does not mean uniformity. It does not mean unanimity. It does mean different things to everyone. But for me, respect, communication, listening, and the belief that we need to find places to build solutions to problems, not find places to argue who's right and who's wrong. We can do that. And that's what Us United was created to help make happen.
Yeah, no, you've led firms through obviously market crashes, economic shifts. But like in 2020, with COVID, right? What really kind of happened there was like the collapse of our social system as we knew it. I mean, it did, the social system didn't like necessarily collapse. It just collapsed how we knew it. And I still think we're seeing the effects of that today. And it only intensifies as, we become so much more centric based around this stuff. What moment, like, when you looked at 2020, outside of George Floyd, right, where you were just like, how did like that? Because, right there that was definitely played a part, like right before, in the middle of COVID, all that just all at one time. I think I don't want to say if it like overloaded the public mind. Like nobody knew what direction to go in. They just knew it was chaos. They knew they just didn't want to see it anymore. And people closed themselves off and just said if they didn't like it, it was automatically bad.
I think, look, I agree with you. There was at that moment in time a massive amount of change and uncertainty and instability. We'll talk about this. I just spent 2.5 months in a purple and white pickup truck driving across America in our Unity in Action road trip and talking to lots and lots of people, sheriffs who we like in our Unity network and thousands of everyday Americans. And one of our stops was Minneapolis, and went to the corner where George Floyd was killed, murdered, in front of Unity Foods, by the way, which is an interesting omen. And it is an unofficial shrine. There's nothing official there. There's a lot of disagreement between the community and the city and the state on what should be there. So it's an unofficial shrine and it's beautiful. I was talking to a gentleman who was there and lived there at the time and sort of call it another unofficial host. And I think to your point, his observation was the reason George Floyd's murder was so impactful was because of COVID. We were all home, we were all watching TV, we were all engaged in it, and we were all already angry because there had been lots of other, particularly Black men that had been killed by law enforcement. There have been other events since then of different people that have, not just with law enforcement, in different ways. I mean, there's all kinds of things that could have, but there was this moment of conflagration at that point, as you said, between COVID, between social unrest, between George Floyd, between vaccines, and between economic stresses. And it just exploded. And out of that, I think good things can and have started to happen. And and I think there will be more of those moments where the assassination of Charlie Kirk, I think, is another moment that has catalyzed and gotten focus for change. People want to change after George Floyd's murder, and there were a lot of things that happened. It took time. There was violence. There's a lot of ways in the path, but a lot happened. Charlie Kirk's assassination, and I've seen this in the work we're doing, there's much more urgency in conversations around unity and around building bridges because people looked at that and said, that can't be America. We can't be going there. We have to do something. So for somebody, there's someone out there had an epiphany moment probably there that I had 5 years ago and is engaged even more in how we can build those bridges and how we can come together. And that's what it's going to take. And that urgency is important. And we're hard at it.
Yeah, for epiphany from my end, to kind of like what created the show for me, like just in general, is I had a good friend of mine, and he, we were talking about January 6th, and I said, do I truly believe that the president was per se behind it? No, but I also believe he was okay to see what was going to happen. And and he was like, well, he goes, that's kind of a leftist view. I said, no, I said, taking 3 hours to respond to the situation makes you complicit, especially when you're the president of the United States. Do I know necessarily he should be in charge of crime? No, that's not necessarily my qualification. But and he goes, oh, you're just a lefty and da da da. And I'm like, I voted for the guy. I didn't vote for Joe Biden. So how can not that like I'm like that doesn't make me a lefty. I just think if you vote for someone, it's okay to challenge them. You should challenge them. To me, that's like your duty as a voter to go, hey, what you did wasn't right. I can agree with you on some things, but there's other things I think what you did is pretty terrible. And when they started saying, hey, where's the vice president? We want to hang him. Like that right there should have been a no-go zone. That should be like, okay, this is over. We're going.
Right.
You know,
So
and,
how did you reconcile that conversation with your friend? And
yeah,
did you, or are you not friends anymore? Or are you strained in your friendship? How'd you navigate that?
we're still friends to this day. And the other day we were talking about the Israeli situation. And how we did it is how we kind of reconciled it. I guess the best way to put it is once he kind of calmed down and kind of came off the ledge a little bit. And he goes, I don't think about it the way that you do. He goes, I believe that it was all set up. And I said, I don't know if it was a setup. I don't know. All I know is even if it was a setup, that means he didn't know about it. And he should have done something about it when it started going off the rails. And he was like, okay, fair point. And, we agreed to kind of leave it at that. And it's kind of like, where I had come out with, well, he was talking to me because now he, ironically, listens to my podcast constantly. And we were talking about Israel and where I said, hey, I totally support Israel's response in the initial of what happened, right? Any natural country, anybody would naturally respond the way they did. But I kind of felt like where we're at now, that it's went too far. I think there is such thing as a response that's gone too far. And I mean, yeah, there's probably the Hamas that have rockets, but I think overall, you're hurting more children than you are Hamas militants. And if you're talking about terrorists, those kids are going to remember what you did to their parents. And in 20 years, they're going to be just as radicalized, if that's your view on it. And it's blocking aid from people where you can see, children are starving, not the Israeli people themselves, because ironically, when you look on TV, the Israeli people themselves wanted the war to end a while ago. Their own citizens were protesting to end the war. And I felt like Benjamin Netanyahu is a borderline, I hesitate to say war criminal, but it's in that realm. I think there's a lot you could say to make that case. Just based on, for me, like, hey, man, you've proven your point. It went beyond Palestine. I get that you can link Iran to a lot of things that have to do with that, but you can also link Israel to a lot of things that have to do with that situation. Benjamin Netanyahu, who I believe gave Hamas like $100 million at some point, for whatever it was. So to me, if you're going to use the Iran thing, hey, he's just as guilty. I guess that's just, for me, hey, you went too far. You're outside of the United States now pressuring you to stop. You had zero intentions of stopping. You flat out said, outside of I want to kill them because they're Arab or Muslim, you pretty much said you wanted to wipe it out, you know, in those words, eradicate Hamas. Well, those are people. You're eradicating people. Like, that's borderline genocide. And those statements were very, very concerning to me, and which can lead the world to a dark road. And I just, I was really, I mean, Trump now kind of put the pressure on him to, and I think that's what led to the peace deal, and said, hey, okay, yeah, now you're kind of starting to go off the rails a little bit, and I truly believe that we were goaded into bombing Iran, because right before that, Trump had Iran and a lot of the Arab states willing to sit down and recognize Israel, that don't currently recognize them. And then all of a sudden, Israel bombs Iran. And I was like, that was real telling, and it just, a lot of things. And I just started looking at it. I don't think there's like a grand conspiracy. I just think that they believe in what they believe, and they believe in it so strongly, they're willing to burn the world down to prove it. Certain folks over there.
And your friend who you were debating this with was in agreement, disagreement? Like, I'm more interested in the debate than the right or the wrong, because, where we've been talking, I mean, how do we talk to each other and listen to each other and not fight with each other? Because that's where unity starts.
Let's take a quick break.
The Middle Ground, Mike, isn't just another podcast. It's a movement for unity, for truth, for a future beyond the left and the right. But movements don't grow without people willing to stand up. Subscribe now on Buzzsprout. Fuel this mission directly on PayPal. Every subscription keeps the fire burning. The links are in the show notes. Be more than a listener. Be part of the Middle Ground. Yeah, he took it from a more of a biblical approach, right? If you're a Christian, technically you would believe that is our, depending how you want to interpret it, to protect the Holy Land, Israel, to protect the Jews. We're obligated to. I don't interpret it that way. When he was like, he goes, they had every right to do what they did. And I said, oh, nobody's arguing that and didn't have the right to do what they did. I mean, you come in my house and do that, I'm going to do the same thing to you. But I said at some point we went too far, and he goes, I don't think we went too far. I said, well, when 1,000 something people were killed, I can't remember the exact number. I said, now they're approaching 20, 30, 40,000 over there. I said, that is a complete over response. And he was like, no, it's not. You're going after people that hurt you. And I'm like, yes, you're going after people that hurt you, but you're going after innocent people too. That's the part you got to remember. And those people are going to be people you got to interact with once this is all done. Like, you have to still interact with them. And he was like, he goes, no, he goes, they should be able to do what they want with this. And, he goes, they should be able to occupy Palestine and, get rid of Hamas and help Palestine set up their own government. And I said, so you're advocating setting up a puppet government like what we've done and has blew up in our face almost every single time. And he goes, I'm trying to think, how did he word it exactly? He goes, well, you're just a communist. And I was like, just because I think a certain way doesn't make, like, just because I'm more of a pro-peace doesn't make me a communist. Like, we get along for the most part, but when he hits that point where he disagrees, he can't say, hey, let's just agree to disagree on this one. Goes right to that, you're a communist, or, you're a fascist. Like, once I said, hey, I think, the price of insulin should be controlled. Oh, you're a socialist. We have the best healthcare in the world. I was like, we may have the best healthcare in the world, but nobody can afford it.
I like to say we have the best healthcare in the world unless you need to use it. But I think, to your point, like, look, I think there's a lesson in all of that, and you hit on it, which is you can't resort to name calling. You can't resort to insults. You're never going to convince somebody that you're right or they're wrong by name calling, by insulting, by saying you're right, I'm right, you're wrong, right? The conversation that you're having is certainly part of the process. And I think it gets to a big chunk of the divides we need to bridge, which is we have to be talking to each other. I mean, we talked earlier, like if all of what you just described was going on anonymously in social media, it is, there's no resolution. And that is a big chunk of what is divisive in this country today, right? I just as I drove around 2.5 months talking to thousands of people, and every single one of them really said, we need more time interacting and away from our screens, and that media, and in particular social media, is the biggest culprit in what appears to be our division, because people are able to say and do whatever they want in an anonymous place. And they're in a culture where yelling is okay. And most Americans know that, right? That that I like to say there's probably 15%, and there's plenty of data and surveys to support this, on each side of the sort of political and issues divide, that are invested in division. They want it, right? Their identity's caught in it, their ego's caught in it. Maybe they have financial or economic or power incentives, whatever it may be. You're not changing that easily. But 70% of Americans, it's your middle ground commentary, don't think we're that divided, don't want to be that divided, realize that we're being presented more extreme views and division by both political and leaders in the media. They get the joke, for lack of a better word. And it's not a joke, but they get the scenario. And I think what I've seen in the danger from all of that is people disengage.
Yes.
And that middle disengages. So most people that we all can think of and know, and many people's behavior that are listening to this, is I'm going to show up and I'm going to vote every 2 years or 4 years because I know that's important. When I do, I look around and I then bombarded by the debate and the ads and the noise, and I'm disgusted and more angered by that. I hold my nose, I vote, and I say, you know what? I'm going back to work. I'm going back to school. I'm going back to my kids. I'm going back to TikTok. I'm going back to whatever. I'm going to ignore all of this noise out here. I'm not watching CNN. I'm not watching Fox. I'm not reading that. But the problem with that is it becomes this self-fulfilling downward spiral, that the only voices then are heard, and heard more loudly, are those invested in division. Then you show up again, you're like, it's worse than the last time I was here. I'm out of here. And it gets
Yeah.
worse and worse and worse, right? Part of my message and part of what we're trying to do is say you can't do that. I am not saying to America, go watch CNN, go watch Fox, go be all that. What I'm saying, though, is if we want to fix the division, every single one of us has to contribute. So how do you do that? You don't post negative things in social media. You don't respond. You can't win in that respect. It's like, it's like, what's the difference between a pig and a hog, right? A hog gets fed, a pig rolls around in the mud, and they like it, right? You don't want to be down there doing that. You won't win. You step away. How about instead post a positive thing in social media once a week? Hey, I saw someone open a door for a stranger, or someone bought someone a free coffee, or somebody out of the blue said, you look like you're having a tough day. You look great. Or how can I help? Like, show something positive, because, by the way, you'll change the algorithms just showing positive, right? We have at Us United, we have a unity pledge on our website and all our social media. Take that unity pledge, share with people you did that, then share something positive on social media. I mean, you see, we have purple is the color of our organization, because red and blue make purple. Wear purple once a week. Put a picture saying, I'm for unity, I'm wearing purple, right? But if everyone starts doing that and engaging that way a little bit, it starts to change the dynamic and the culture. Algorithms react differently. By the way, eventually different candidates run for different offices because they see there's engagement of that middle. But right now, what I definitely heard a lot in talking to people, and I think hopefully made progress, like I just said, and what I just said is, feel like this is too big a problem for me. I don't know what to do. So I disengage. No, don't. Just do little things, right? And if everyone does little things, it will get better. And so I think that's, you're doing it. You've got your podcast. You're doing it because you're saying, someone calls me a communist or socialist, I don't get mad at them and say, I'm not talking to you. I'm just going to step back and I'm going to be respectful. And that's an important word that we'll come back to. If everyone can do a little bit, I know it will change because I've seen it.
That reminds me of the phrase, I may not agree with you, but I'll defend your right to say it, no, and I think that's important, like you're talking about US United, Sheriff Swanson, he became a symbol from a lot of things, and I remember when the George Floyd thing happened, and I remember that him walking with the protesters, and you know they were doing not something like that, but they did a very similar thing in Detroit, where the protests didn't get like crazy violent. And I said to my wife, I'm like, that is how you make change. Because now the people they may disagree with you, but now you're gonna get some people that are gonna be willing to go, well, let's have a coffee and talk about it. A good analogy I like to use is or representation is Tip O'Neill and Ronald Reagan, bitter political enemies, but they had dinner, I think, almost every single week that they could. And they did it as men. So that way, and they were able to do that, be political rivals and still get things done for the nation. And it was, to me, it's like that. Yes, that's where it's at. The art of compromise, the art of knowing that even though I don't agree with you, I know that you're not the devil. And now we close ourselves off, and people want an echo chamber to be like, your feelings are right. Everybody else's feelings are wrong. And yeah, well, I think facts can be true on both sides because I say reality is perception. How you perceive things is your reality. So if you perceive something one way, I could show you all the facts I want in the world, but it's not going to change it. So it's you got to be willing to bend that. I remember him saying or having on his helmet, and saying, I should say, let's walk together. What did that teach you kind of like about the movement and kind of, like really
Sure.
like
Well,
juicing
in
it
a
up?
lot of ways, that's where us United grew out of that. I met Chris for the first time about 6 months later in November of 2020. And one, he is exactly that authentic person. The reason that moment happened, the let's walk moment, was he rolled up with lots of deputies to what looked a very violently hostile crowd that was verging on violence, angered over George Floyd's murder, angry with police, and he looked at it and did something that took incredible bravery, but it was authentic to who he was. And he did take off his body armor, his helmets, his guns, and he saw someone he knew in the crowd, and he walked over to that person and he said to people, "What do you want?" And they chanted, "Walk with us, walk with us." And he said, "All right, let's walk," because I agree with you. You see the video. These law enforcement here, we want to be with y'all. We don't, murder's murder. We agree with you. We're on your team. We all need to figure out how to get along. And for 3 hours, they walked together and thousands of people showed up because they saw that and it was inspiring, right? And that moment is who Chris Swanson is. I met him 6 months later. When I went to visit him the first time, and this is when I really knew that it was authentic. Every law enforcement agency in the country, generally, what's their motto? To protect and to
Yeah,
serve.
to practice it. It's on pretty much every police car in America.
Right. Every car in Genesee County, Michigan says to protect, to serve, and to unify. You add those two words to basically the mission of law enforcement, you've changed the job, right?
I mean,
Because it's
significantly.
for the better,
Oh
right?
yeah, no,
And it
for
doesn't
sure.
mean you're not protecting and serving. There, there's plenty that you have to do that. But if you sit there and say, my job is to do that while bringing my community together, first of all, you're going to have less need to protect and serve because you're going to have built those bridges where people are getting along and there will be less crime. There will be less violence. There's lots of positives to it. But I saw that about Chris. I'm like, this guy is the real deal. And that's the spiraling start that led down the path to Us United and saying, effectively, how do we take that and make that a movement? And how do we get people to be aware of it? So one of the things you said, to your point about, your right to say what you want to say. On our road trip, there are lots of amazing conversations I had. There was one with a gentleman in front of Doak Campbell Stadium at Florida State University where we had stopped. Family was there, talking gentleman, former Marine, I believe, either Army or Marines. And what does unity mean to you? And talk about, are we getting more unified or not and why? And he really felt we could and we are. And so this is how I reach out branches. And then he volunteered, said, but the one thing that I can't accept and I can't unify around is if you burn the flag. And I said, okay.
I
I
can
said,
respect that.
I respect that. I said, and I understand that. But how do you reconcile with, among others, you fought for the freedom to do that. The Supreme Court of the United States years ago said, It is your constitutional right under free speech you can burn the flag of the United States of America. I said, I don't have to like it. I don't. You don't have to like it. You don't. But how can you then say, I won't talk to somebody if they do that? Because you just said how you build unity in every other case. And we talked for a little while. He's like, you're right. He's like, I hear you. I got to understand what is so bad that someone thinks that's what they need to do. Right. I don't have to agree with them, and I can tell them that. But he's like, "Yeah, you're right. I need to understand that." And then in conversation, hopefully help them understand maybe there's another way to protest. But I think so. Part of to what you talked about, and I say this to a lot of people, like, how do you navigate that kind of a situation or something that is that emotionally charged? Pick whatever your issue is. And I think the answer to that for a lot of us is storytelling. Humans are natural storytellers. If I tell you you're wrong and I'm right, and this is why, you've shut down. If I say, hey, I hear you on flag burning. Here's an experience that I had. Like the story I just told you, that's now my personal experience. You cannot say to me, Adam, you're wrong. It happened. I experienced it. Or it could be a story. Now you've got that story from me. You can share it. You can say, let me tell you a real experience that a friend of mine had on this issue. The other person is going to step back and say, I never thought of that, or I didn't see it that way. They may or may not tell you you've changed their mind, but I promise you, you've changed someone's opinion, even 5 or 10%, because that experience is different than their own. And we listen to experiences. And I think part of what that art is lost a little bit with, let me just tell you you're wrong and why. I believe this and you're wrong. No, like this happened to someone I know on flags, or someone I know on guns, or someone I know on abortion, or someone I know on violence, or on whatever it may be. That's what we need to talk more to each other about. And that does happen through conversation. It doesn't happen through a DM or a comment on an Insta or TikTok post. It doesn't happen watching television. It happens in conversations, digitally or in real life. And I think experiences are so important. I've learned so much that I didn't understand from hearing other people's experiences. And it has changed my views on things. Maybe not 180 degrees, but it makes me change a little bit. And that's where unity builds.
Yeah, that makes me think about I had what was it? I believe they're saying Americans, I think it's like 70 some odd percent believe that news organizations are politically polarized. And I mean, that's pretty obvious. I mean, you just got to you can turn on any news channel, give it about 5 minutes, and you'll figure out maybe not even necessarily who they're behind, but who they definitely lean towards. The one news organization I can say that seems to try to balance both, though. I mean, the guy on the right is he's a little too like out there for me. News Nation, where Chris Cuomo went. And it was amazing. As soon as Chris Cuomo left like mainstream media, all of a sudden this guy became a complete centrist. He went from the left, and he pretty much said, yeah, we were told to lie. And I mean, look at what was his name, Chuck Todd. Pretty much once he left MSNBC, he said, yeah, they pretty much told us to lie about Biden, and we didn't tell the truth. And we hid things. And I was, the more I see that, I'm sitting there and I'm like, so you knowingly vilified innocent people for questioning certain things that you knew were true. And I just, I respect them for coming out and saying it, what I mean? Cause that's like, obviously your chances of probably ever getting hired at any major media company have just been eliminated. Nobody's going to employ you. But how can unity movements compete with these crazy billion-dollar media ecosystems? Like that's where sometimes I find it, right? Like there's like certain areas where I've tried to be like, hey, da da da, and it's just like deaf ears. But if I post something, a little bit that'll get attention. But if I, where are you gaining the traction at that maybe certain other areas don't?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think you're exactly right. And that is, we have a system. And as media has fragmented, and the competition because of that in technology to get attention requires extremes, right? It does. And again, I think people are aware of it. I think what that means is there's more burden on all of us as individuals to listen to, whether watching or reading, multiple sources to try to hear multiple perspectives to form our own. It's more work. There's an interesting company called All Sides. It's web.com, and they have an app, which is a media company that basically on any story aggregates and reports 3 articles, the left, the center, and the right, all in one place on their sites and on their app. So that at least try to make it a little easier. You could read with 3 different perspectives they're saying on pick your issue. That's one thing one can do. I mean, for me, I don't watch any news on television anymore because it is just vitriolic and divisive. I'll read, and I read lots of different things to try to understand my own opinions. I mean, I only watch when you're like, God, I got either something real time disaster or whatever, where you need information, or you need to see the visualization of some event, whatever that may be, right? Could have been the fire in the Pacific Palisades. Like, you had to see that. You couldn't just read that, right? You were alluded to, January 6th, you had to see that. You can't just read that, right? Things like that. But otherwise, so that's how I navigate that, to try to balance those things for myself. I don't think we're going to change that media. I think part of them, what you need to do, and that's part of what we do at Us United, is I think looking in culture for things that do unify us and highlighting those and participating through those. So one of the things, for instance, an example, we created and has been approved by something called the National Day Calendar, National Unity Day. So we have National Unity Day this year will be December the 13th. Every year it's the second Saturday in December. That's the 13th this year. As a day that we could all do something, right? From Unity Pledge to Purple to being nice to someone. One of the things we'll say in our toolkits is, hey, on National Unity Day, almost every one of us has a family member or friend that we don't have a relationship with anymore, probably because of politics and because of all that. Pick up the phone and call that person on National Unity Day and reset that relationship.
It's a
Easy one,
great way.
right? Great way to do something for unity, right? So, but one of the things we're trying to do that day also is I'm working on making happen unity seats at professional sporting events. Why aren't there, and we work with our sheriffs. We have a sheriff's unity network we've created, of sheriffs around the country. The sheriff, they'll invite 2 different families who don't know each other and are different from each other, at least on the surface. Come sit in the unity seats and cheer for the Lions or the Bears or the Giants or the Rams or whomever it may be, because you'll come together over sports. I don't care what, right? Think about it. Whether we are rivals, like I can be whooping it up and giving hell. I'm a Yankees fan, they're a Red Sox fan. But after the game, whether I won or my team won or lost, we can hug it out. We love baseball. It was a game. And we can debate. That shouldn't have happened. Your team, but it's a debate over a common interest, right? We've found unity. And from there, we can go to lots of other conversations. So let's have unity seats at every game. Put the people on the Jumbotron. Show them coming together. And the message to American culture and America is unity got me those great seats. How do I get into that line for unity? Because division didn't get me seats to watch whatever team it is. Unity did. And unity got me on the Jumbotron. Unity got me a new friend, right? Now
Yeah.
I'm penetrating into culture and I'm talking to people and saying, we can do this. Tom Brady was in a speech somewhere that someone clipped and put on Insta a few weeks ago. He's like, in fact, he said, I know how to bring people together. Every Sunday, I had 70,000 people in a stadium cheering for me, who were all different, who didn't know each other and probably might not have liked each other, but they could all find something to cheer about, and they could talk about sports, the good, the bad, and then they could get along. And look, same thing with music, by the way.
Oh, yeah.
Music brings us all together. So that's another one. Same thing, unity seats at concerts, right? How do you build bridges in that way? Food brings us together, right? I mean, that's at a more micro level. We should be having unity coffees. Hey, if I were the chief marketing officer of Starbucks, every time you come into Starbucks, if you want to buy a coffee for a stranger, we have a table set aside for unity. If you sit at that table with a stranger, we'll pay for the coffee, or buy one, get one, something, right? Whatever.
Yeah,
Have a
I mean, that
coffee
would be a
together.
perfect way, really.
Yeah, there's so many things we can do. They're not that, when you start to think about it, they're not that complicated. And that's where I'm spending a lot of time trying to make it happen, because you've got to convince a lot of people to do what I just said. But Those are things that build unity. And then the media will tell that story, by the way. But that's how you also go around the media, because you start having conversations like, I'm talking, oh, look what I learned talking to you. I didn't have to hear Chris Cuomo or Don Lemon or Sean Hannity give me whatever they think. I'm feeling, So those are the things we can do. We can do this. And that's what's so important.
Yeah, no, we definitely can. I think was it they say on your well, let me phrase it, on your Unity road trip, you spent 2.5 months. Oh, and we talk about like everybody. I think was it Rob Schneider is one of his famous quotes are, go outside and you'll find that you have, believe he said, more in common with your neighbor than you think. Yeah, he's an avid libertarian slash. Actually, I think right now he's more MAGA, but before that he was very libertarian. you know, do you find that like per se like that like you were talking a lot of people feel way is that context true? And how do we go from, and I'm sure you experienced people that were like, yeah, man, this is blah blah blah, that were a little bit more like isolated, right? From your perspective, meeting, and being around the business world and things, like how do we get there from where we're at? Like, and like beyond, like how do we get people to wanna, if you're a business, set up a Unity table, set up a Unity, how do we get them to want to do that? Whereas now is, if you do that, some companies are like, because it doesn't play into what they're trying to portray.
Part of that is back to what I said earlier. People need to engage and show that that's where their belief and their feelings are. Because if you're a business, you respond to where you think your customers are, right? So one, if you see a lot of that, you're going to behave differently as a business. But come back to that. So before building to that, it's already there. I mean, the interesting thing was, I would say that almost everyone I spoke with defined unity with some subset of the same 10 or 12 words. Respect, communication, golden rule, lots of different things. That's really important. You can't fix a problem if you don't define what it is the same way. We got it. Americans are defining unity similarly with the same kinds of words. Didn't matter what state, didn't matter whether you were 80 or 20, man, woman, what race you were, didn't matter. So that was really interesting to me. The next thing that was equally interesting is the majority of people don't believe we're as divided as media and politics portray. And you and I have been talking about that. That's not necessarily surprising, but it was interesting to see it, right? They really don't. And even those that do think we're very divided, where everyone, I could say, I think unanimously, I can't remember anybody who said, I want us to be this divided. Everybody said, and there are people out there. I didn't avoid anybody. We just talked to people. It was a complete random selection, and certainly talked to people who on the surface, based on what they were wearing, saying, and doing, were deep MAGA or deep progressive far left, both sides, right? So, but none of those people are like, we should be divided. The answer is we don't want to be. We don't know how to be more unified, but most think we are. And what they really said is, we want hope. We need inspiration to do this, because we don't get it on TV. We don't get it on social media. So back to everything I said, if we put it out there, people, it's a little bit of, if you build it, they will come. They're already there. People just need that brand of unity. They need that example of unity. They need that way to participate. They need those things. So we have National Unity Day. We'll have unity seats. You got, an Us United hat, wear purple. Like every division, every brand, and there's lots of division brands, right? That you can think of them.
Yeah.
Both sides. And again, no sides in this. Where's the unity brand?
Yeah, that's hopefully something you're creating. We
Right.
need it. We need it.
But so we need T-shirts and hats. And remember the Livestrong bracelet when before Lance Armstrong had his bracelet. Everyone was wearing that one, the yellow Livestrong bracelet. Like, what's the unity symbol that everybody could wear? So I see you and you see me on the street, and we may look very different. You're like, hey, he's got the same Us United hat on, or that Us United bracelet. You know what? Maybe we're not so different. Like you see someone in a Lions jersey, you're like, we're fans, man. I can high five, I can fist bump you, whatever the heck it is, because we got to tribe together for the Detroit Lions, right?
Yes.
Well, imagine you see somebody for unity and the unity symbol. Like, hey, we got to tribe for unity. I can fist bump you on that too. Great. We can do this, right? But to your point, those are the things that are there. And I think as those people start to realize that those little actions by them show that, Then all of a sudden, pick on start. It could be McDonald's. It doesn't matter. Businesses say, wait a minute, I want to tap into that and I want to be part of that because it's good for the country and it's good for business.
Right. Yeah. I
Great.
mean, and I think a lot of businesses, if they wouldn't be so scared, because I mean, naturally, you want to protect your brand. It's natural, especially when you're a business, but I think they would find that they would get a lot more support if they focused on unity rather than some businesses will say, we support unity, or we support this, and it's like, no, just support it and be at that. Don't get rid of that but word, and anytime, in my job, when I hear people say, well, da, 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 but, and I'm like, well, you just pretty much eliminated everything you just said. So, like, oh no, I'm like, no, that's when you say but after that, and they're like, oh, okay. And I try to tell people that, independents and centrists are now accounting for 42% of voters. So people in America really are kind of moving independent slash in the middle slash, and to me, that means they're opening the doors up for unity, and that door is going to keep, more people like you, like this show, like, hopefully, and I know Charlie Kirk was controversial, very controversial to some people. But what I feel like gets lost sometimes is he really advocated a lot of what America is supposed to stand for. I can disagree with you. You can disagree with me. And in the end, we go on about our day. And he would always say in his debates, he'd be like, let's find something we can at least find some kind of agreement on, something. And, whether you like the guy, hate the guy, he always tried to do that. And I think the reason to me why it hit so hard, kind of like George Floyd is, well, first, I mean, it's pretty much on live TV and it was like, whoa, that was a really intense situation. But beyond that is a lot of people kind of deep down that hope they can be able to do that to some degree. And now they're watching somebody that tried to do something that they're like, well, I really hope that future was there for my kid. They're watching them getting shot for it. And that creates a lot of fear in people's hearts and minds. And, I was right after that. I'm sure you've seen the headlines. Churches were packed. I mean, you couldn't find an open seat in a lot of them. And then that kind of led me to, like researching some stuff. And I always think that the younger generation gets a worse rap than is really deserved. I know a lot of young kids who work real hard and are just good, genuine kids. There's plenty of terrible young people out there.
There's plenty of terrible 60-year-olds too.
Yeah, it's just like Gen Z. I doesn't think it's a fair shake. They get portrayed one way. But it was odd, something that found that I would have never guessed until I looked it up. Gen Z goes to church more on like a per person basis than millennials or Gen X. They're like, compared to other people in their age range, they're 12 points more conservative than the previous two generations at that same point. And but in being that conservative, they're also still very middle leaning. They're conservative, but they're not like all the way to one side. I believe it was Yale who did the poll, and they did the research. I guess, I mean, if you were just telling me that in a casual conversation, like, I would have, with no research, I'd be like, yeah, okay. Which you turn on, you see TV, you see all these Gen Z people going off the rails. And again, it goes back to squeaky wheel gets the grease, and
Media wants to show you the plane crash, not the plane landed safely.
right. Yeah.
Right.
That's what sells.
Right. If it doesn't bleed, it doesn't lead. I mean, you can pick any cliche you want. And as a consumer, we just have to understand that, right? We understand, and any product or service that we purchase as a consumer, we understand what we're buying and why. We need to understand that about media too.
Yeah.
That's okay.
So the challenge is with like with what you're doing with US United is how, like, how can we juice up the silence and in the middle, in the in the people who want to be united? Like, how do we, is more of like a movement rather than just a cup of coffee. How can we get that juiced up? Like, because the other sides win, or the extremists, if you want to call it, I should say, win, because they're just, they're amped. I'm not saying necessarily we need to be amped, but how do we get that passion?
Well, I think I agree with you. It's a movement, and you have to get people engaged in it. And to the things I said, you've got to plug into culture, right? That's why I'm so focused on sports and music in particular. So I'm focused on Unity Seats. That's why I'm focused on, unity events, right? A big concert for unity. Why not? Like, let's show and let's celebrate. Let's give opportunities. That's why we created Unity Day, right? Take a moment, do something. And here's simple. That's why we focus on, wear purple or wear an Us United hat or whatever it may be. Those are all things that get you amped up, right? And get you feeling that and look, the answer is to some degree, I don't mean, there's a reason influencers, and I, to some degree, do not like the word, right? But there's a reason that that's a powerful connective tool, because we do want to connect with and understand from people that we respect, whether that's, Kim Kardashian, whether that's LeBron James, whether that's Tom Brady, whether that's Patrick Mahomes, whether that's Aaron Judge. I think, yeah, and whether that's someone that you and I don't know who's got 28,000 followers on Instagram because they're passionate about restoring old Corvettes. All of those people have communities. And part of, I think, the way you engage is to say, and this is what I think what divisive forces have been good at is tapping into that and spreading that message. Well, spread it for good. I mean, one of the beauties of social media, we can criticize a lot about it, but one of the beauties is you have an ability to reach a huge amount of people. Let's reach them with a positive message. And I think there haven't been many who've tried to do that. And so again, I'll come back to sports. There's nothing more unified than a locker room. Pick any team. The people in that locker room could not be more different. They cover probably the entire spectrum. And you add an international flavor to that too, right? In almost every
Oh, yeah.
sport. They all come together for a common goal as a team. They listen to each other, they respect each other, they communicate with each other, and they work together for common goal. Win that game, win the championship. That's what we're saying as Americans. We're all on the same team. We have a common goal. The thriving of the country we love, the United States of America. That does not mean, just like on that football team, we are all going out to dinner with each other every night. No, we're not. But we have a common goal. That doesn't mean we always agree, but it means we need to work with each other. So we need to keep sending that message and showing that happens every day in most of our country. It happens in your company, right?
Yeah.
You're working for a common goal, which is to make the company succeed more, have more profits, so you get paid more. Your stock's worth more. Your salary goes up. You can take care of your family. And you don't sit there and say, I can't work with that person. They're wearing a MAGA hat, or I can't work with that person. They're wearing a blue donkey hat. I mean, no, you don't. You sit there and say, we have a common goal. We can agree to disagree on some things. We can put those aside to work together. It is the same thing. So how do we do it is we have to activate all of those messaging. There's people of messaging and influence. We have to give them a brand. We have to give them ways to do it. We have to show them unity. We have to show them stories. We have to show them, on our road trip, one of my favorites, woman in Birmingham, Alabama. We posted about this a few times in our Instagram, 5-mile rule. She's like, Adam, if everyone worries about the 5 miles around they live, radius of where they live, be nice in that, check on your neighbors, volunteer, support your local businesses and community, engage and understand what's going on with your mayor or your this or that, but work on your 5 miles. It's like if we all did that, the country's unified, because your 5 miles and my 5 miles will eventually overlap. If I say to someone in Birmingham, you got to figure out how to be unified with someone in Dallas and someone in LA, they're like, oh my God, that is like, they're different. They're so far away. I don't even know. Just worry about your 5 miles, because everybody's 5 miles overlap. We got a unified country. So share that tool. Like, that's why we're putting it on our socials. Why bring it up? Like, these are the things. It isn't too big. We've been, I think, convinced or fearful that it's too big. It's not. It really, really isn't. If you think of it, cliches, right? How do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time.
Yeah. I mean, that's spot on.
How you build unity? One person, one simple act of kindness, of respect. I would say respect at a time. If we all just take a simple act of respect everywhere, we will be unified. Because I won't call you a communist if I'm respecting you.
Exactly.
I might say I don't agree with you, but I won't call you a communist, or I won't call you a racist, or I won't call you this. I will respect you. And I get there are some people you can't respect. There's some things you cannot respect. There are things that are non-negotiable, but you still don't have to get to name calling. We had a long Wonderful conversation with Shaquille O'Neal as part of our road trip. And I liked him before and massive respect of him after. And that's what he said. He said, to me, unity means respect. He's like, I respect everybody. I start in that place. If you're not going to treat me with respect, he's like, I'm going to find a polite way to extricate myself and walk away. I'm not going to yell at you. I'm not going to be mean to you. He's 7 feet, 240, 300 pounds. I'm not going to beat you up, which you could beat everybody up. Like, I'm not doing any of those things. Without respect, I will find a polite way to extricate myself because I run my life on respect. Same thing. If you're a racist, I'm not respecting you. And I will share experiences to try to help you see why I might see it differently. And my friend Ken, who's the Free Hugs guy, has a long list of stories of people he's spoken with and spent time with who had literally said, I've never sat down and talked to her, how to kneel the black man. And at the end of it, had a completely different view. That's how you can address that. And if they're willing to respect you, and if not, you just walk away. But you don't have to fight about it because you're not going to win that fight. You're going to roll around the mud. The pigs are going to get dirty and like it. You're just going to get dirty.
Yeah.
Walk away.
Well, how is this, I should say, how has this mission changed you personally, as like a father, a businessman? For me, I got like two sons, right? My 7-year-old's autistic, and I got a 15-year-old as well. I look at now and I always have to tell him, I say, hey, how you present yourself is definitely a little bit more sensitive than it would have been 10 years ago, 20 years ago. There's a lot of just generalities out there now, especially if you're a young man, depending on your race, it's even more, sensitized, right? So as a father, for me, unity is key. But then I also have to figure out how to navigate my son to be like, okay, hey, yes, we need to focus on this. You also need to make sure you're not putting yourself in a situation that you can't necessarily get out of. So, how has this movement changed you?
Sure. I mean, significantly. And this road trip in particular, certainly. It has absolutely made me more compassionate and more empathetic. It has made me more patient. It has made me more inquisitive. It has made me more tolerant. It has made me really value differences. It's made me happier because I feel that I'm doing something good. Again, it doesn't have to be every minute of every day, but it has made me appreciate, the cliche, I appreciate my family even more than I did before. And I've always appreciated them. I have two daughters, one's 24, one's 21. So I'm sort of at the beyond the stage you're at. But um, it, you know, it makes me want to talk to them more and to listen better for sure. All of those things. And, certainly in my life, I've struggled to be happy at times. And and I still do. That's a part for lots of reasons going to be a lifelong struggle for me. But I am much happier. Because of people, I really value people and relationships much more than I used to. And I appreciate them and I recognize them. And so I think all of those things are true. And that's changed how I interact with everybody, starting
Yeah.
with myself,
Yeah. You gotta figure out how to love yourself.
because that's what you just said is critical. You can't have unity. You can't unify with someone else if you're not loving yourself and happy with yourself. I mean, think about it. How can you go get along with someone if you're like, basically you don't like yourself or you're really unhappy? You're going to
Oh yeah.
bring that energy with you everywhere. And that's the hardest part. I mean, people have to find their tools for that. But unity does start with yourself. And then
Yes.
it can be connected with everybody else. And I think that's something I probably should have talked about earlier because I think, again, what can everyone do? Work on yourself a little bit, right? And look, life is not easy, right? For anybody. We are presented challenges continually. We have to figure out each of us individually how to accept them, how to manage through them, maintain some happiness and positivity in that. And I know it's hard, but look, I think we've seen very simple example. Whatever you see, Charlie Kirk's wife, and I'm sorry, her name escapes me at the moment.
Erica.
Erica. Thank you. She stood up there at his funeral and said, I forgive his killer because that's what Jesus would do and that's what Charlie would do. That's not easy to do,
No,
right?
she did that a whole lot faster than I probably would have.
Yeah, that's incredibly hard. And I agree with you. I don't know, but like and not everyone's going to be there right away. But the point of that is if she carries on that anger and hate, it's only affecting her, right? That the gentleman, again, name escapes me, who assassinated Charlie, he's not carrying that anger and hate towards her. Like she's got to carry that. I mean, it's Zen Buddhist teachings, right? If there's plenty of people, if you keep angry with people in the past in your life, only you have that anger. Even if they did you wrong, they don't have it. So their lives are going on without the anger. You're carrying that and it's weighing you down. It's up to any one of us to figure out how to release whatever anger, resentment, whatever that is. It doesn't mean you accept that what someone did to you is right or whatever it may be, but you have to let go of that anger. It will destroy you. And then you'll carry it forward to everyone else, right? Part of the division we see of people carrying that anger and resentments and applying it to everyone else. And look, all of this is hard. Where spirituality and churches can be incredibly helpful for that, for lots of people. Meditation can be helpful. It works for me. It doesn't work for everybody, but it works for me, right? You find those tools that allow you to do that, then unity and your ability to unify can follow. And look, it's hard. The human condition is hard. Life is hard. Again, those are all things that we can do. We have to choose that.
Yeah, and what advice would you give someone listening, right, who feels completely hopeless about the state of this country? Like, how can they get from there to the unity? Like, and just because it's once you break that initial mold, it's a whole lot easier. It's kind of like riding a bike. Once you get a half a block without falling down, it's still a little wobbly, but you're going to get there. But how do you break that mold? Because I think that's where a lot of people that haven't gotten as far as like you are wanting to be like, hey, we want to get this done. We want to figure out how to get along. We want to figure out because we got people starving in this country, and we're worried about if you've got an R next to your name, you want to pay the electric bill, how somehow that's a national tragedy. Or if you've got a D next to you, like, how do we get people to just break that mold? Because once they can do that, once we show them that way, it's game over for the extremists.
I think we've both said it multiple times in ways in this conversation. Do something kind,
Yes.
right? And do something don't get angry, do something kind, because you will feel unity and you will see it. Open a door, check on a neighbor, pay it forward, buy a coffee, pay it forward and just give someone a compliment and see that smile, right? Feel, do something kind. And then you are getting out of that angry shell and the kindness will come back to you and it starts to positively spiral. Then you can do anything you got, posting positive, whatever, but do something. I mean, like that's where I start. So many of my friends who are like, I'm so mad about this or I'm so mad about that in politics or in the country. Like, wow, don't get mad, do something.
Right.
Yeah. That's something could be go volunteer somewhere, right? That's something, do something that makes you feel like you're going to make it a little bit better, right? Because you did one thing and it felt good to you and it made it a little bit better. Then to your point, let me try another thing. That felt good and another thing. But just getting angry, just screaming at, in my case, CNN at that moment in time, did nothing but get me upset. As my wife said, no one's hearing you. What are you going to do?
Right.
You don't have to do what I'm doing. You don't have to go crazy the way I'm going crazy and everything else, in the sense of trying to build this movement and do something big. You can do something small. But if you're doing something, you will feel better.
Yeah. No. A case in point with that would be it just really like dawned on me. My 7-year-old's autistic. He's got when he was like 2. They're pretty much like, we're 4 whenever they diagnose. And we don't really know what's going to happen with it. And I'm sitting there and I'm going, a lot of the things you guys are calling autism, I don't know, I see a lot of quote unquote normal people do. Chewing on a pen can be a sign of autism. or a STEMing. And I'm like, man, like everybody when I was in high school would have been considered autistic. And I just started like challenging just like some of like the basic concepts of what they were calling autism tendencies. And I couldn't accept it. And I said, I had speech delay. My son has what they call echolalia. So he had speech delay and echolalia. So echolalia is if I say, hi, how are you doing? He's going to repeat, hi, how are you doing? And he'll do that sometimes, but he tends to only do it if he knows you. It's really odd. But, he has overcome every single challenge. This kid has echolalia and repeats a lot, but he's literally in general education because of how smart he is. But if I would have listened to the doctors initially, he would be in a special class where, hey, hopefully you can hold a job scoring bottle caps. I'm not knocking anybody's child who is, right? It was just that's what they were trying to tell me was going to be my best hope. And I was just like, do I know where he's going to be? No, I don't. But I'm sure as heck not going to let him sell himself short because somebody told him that. I'm going to try to give him every shot. And no matter what, even sometimes when he gets embarrassed and he cries, he always turns around with a smile in the end. He's just, no matter what, he's just optimistic and, he's just boom, boom, boom. And I'm like, I remember when I was that young and I was so optimistic and I felt so positive about everything in my life. And I was like, that's what I miss the most is just waking up every day and going, you know what? It's a great day just because I woke up. And he wakes up and he goes, Dad, the sun's out. Let's go outside. And I'm talking, this kid's saying this at 5:30 in the morning. And I'm going, man, I didn't even go to bed till midnight. Like, like you gotta let me like consume something, like a cup of coffee, anything. And he's like already getting his shoes on, running out the door. And I'm like, oh my God. I'm like, people are sleeping, Henry. But it gave me that. It really like that part of becoming a father, like really like, especially with him, and I guess maybe where things were at the time, really just kind of like made me go, man, I want to make the world a better place for him. I feel like it's my job as a father to try to give him a world where his positivity is going to be seen as okay rather than you're different.
You're right. I
And
think, okay.
No, good.
I was going to say one of the things that I try to meditate on, and I try to use it as a mantra in life is first thing with gratitude, not expectation.
Yes.
Then you will see then you will see the positive things the way you described of your son. Then you will have more of that energy because nothing's ever going 100% right or 100% wrong. Be grateful for the things that are going well and not expect perfection because the more you have high expectations of whatever, things rarely can meet our expectations. Be grateful for what they are and
Yeah.
you will be happier.
I mean, hey, you talk a lot about sports. I cannot tell you how grateful I am for Dan Campbell. That is one person in sports because my God, he turned a lifetime of misery into
Yeah. Yeah.
gold.
Right.
And the crazy part, he was on the 0-16 team.
Yeah. And he didn't give up, right? I mean, that's right. There's definitely that.
If there was ever like kind of how like we talk about it, if there was ever a person that could idolize, like not idolize, but like you could use as like a, hey, it's him, right? Because he fixed the Detroit Lions, man. And that is like solving world hunger almost, in kind of just a sports analogy, right? I mean, he just did what nobody ever thought was possible. I was a season ticket holder for 15 years.
Wow.
This is the first season that I don't have him. I was a little bitter, okay, hey, you guys are good now, but man, you like tripled your prices in 2 years. I mean, I get you want to make money. I'm not against it, but a lot of us were here when you guys couldn't even fill the stadium with 20 people per se,
Right.
and they went from $1,700 a couple years ago to almost $5,000 for 3 seats in the nosebleeds.
Well,
And they're got
tell
a
you what,
highest average ticket price.
we get some Unity seats at a Lions game. We'll put you on the short list.
Hey man, I'm definitely, it's been great having you on here, Adam. And I think there's a lot of things we could do together down the road with this because our brands definitely are very, very similar.
Yeah,
And like keep doing what you're doing because not just this country, but this world needs to see it. And America is the place that's supposed to be where people look to find it. And we have a responsibility to, I wouldn't necessarily provide that for the world, but give the world that example that it is possible. It is possible to live with your neighbor and look at him and be like, yeah, man, that guy's crazy, but he's a cool guy. A little crazy, but he's okay. Rather than, man, do not talk to him, build a bigger fence so I can't even see he exists. And that just kind of seems to be where we have been. This journey is just it's taught me a lot, and it just sounds like it's taught you a lot. You're in business. I'm obviously not as high up in the corporate ladder as you were, but I see a lot of things, and sometimes my bosses vehemently disagree with me. Where I have the policy of see where someone can be, not where they're at. Because if you always want to look at where someone's at, you're always going to miss out on the best opportunity to find the best candidate. Because my bosses, they want to look at what can give me that result in about 3 seconds. And I'm looking at it, and they want to hire from the outside. And I'm like, I like to try to develop people that, they're part of our culture that we can develop, and I can see them where they're gonna go. And they're just kind of like, nah, I don't know. I mean, they kind of let me do my own thing to a point. They're kind of like, all right, well, that's a crazy guy over there. He makes us money, so we just kind of look the other way. But yeah, no, that's just man, I can only say just keep doing what you're doing, and especially with sheriff. I mean, what he did was still, I mean, 30 years down the road, that's going to be an example people see on TV.
Well, let's get him on your show.
Yeah, man. I mean, let's do it. I mean, we could really have some powerful conversations, and yeah, I mean, I appreciate you coming on, and I know everybody here does,
Thank
especially
you for
like on my
having me.
show, it's guys like you are what keep this thing growing, and people going, hey, it's not just some pipe dream, it's actually something that is out there.
Well, I appreciate you having me. I really do. Thank you. And look, as we said, to your audience, National Unity Day, December 13th. Do something. Want to learn more? Come to us-united.org. Go to our Instagram, go to our TikTok, go to our Facebook, go wherever. Be part of the movement. Like that's what we need. It's up to all of us. If you're inspired a little bit, come check it out.
Yeah. All right, everybody. I'm Joe. Adam, thanks for being on, and hope everybody has a good night.
Thanks.